What's interesting is that we've written, what, 7 operas by now? 6 or 7?
Yeah.
This is your 7th one?
Yeah, I'm working on my 7th.
And I would say more than half are based on, you know, true stories, historical subject, mostly recent history, some distant history. Wakanda's Dream is kind of, it's not, I think it's a sort of a fictional story, but which, where the characters are affected by some very specific histories?
Yes, yes. Well, I was actually commissioned by Opera Omaha to do, they wanted me to do an opera about the trial of Standing Bear. And Standing Bear is an important figure, particularly in the history of the state of Nebraska, because the Poncas were removed from Nebraska and they were sent to Oklahoma. And when Bear Shield, who was Standing Bear's son, was dying, he promised they would bury him back in Niobrara, Nebraska, which is the homeland of the Poncas. So he and a band of the Poncas returned to Nebraska. And then there was a trial, and actually the first time they recognized the writ of habeas corpus for Native Americans was the trial of Standing, saying that he had a right as an individual to live where he wanted, not as a tribe. And so to me, that was kind of a Pyrrhic victory. And so I decided, since I'd done Amistad before, I wasn't really eager to do another opera about a trial with a trial. So I decided I wanted. So Yusef Kaminyaka was working on Libretto with me, and I went to a powwow in Niobrara with the Poncas, which was great, and I met a woman there who had a child who had. Who was a dancer who always wore black feathers at the powwow. He was a little kid. And I said, well, why does he have the black feathers? I just was struck with the conversation. She said, because he has sight. He sees the future. And voices speak to him. So that's it. Okay, that's interesting. So that became the hook for me. So I said, why don't I write about a contemporary Native American family who's haunted by Standing Bear? So that's what was my way into
That's it's a very interesting way, and quite a unique way of incorporating actual history into a fictional story. Now, of course, your first and perhaps most celebrated piece is The Life and Times of Malcolm X. Now, was it, from that point on, with the success of that, did you then decide that, did you make a conscious decision that historical operas would kind of be your thing?
Well, I made the conscious decision not to do it. My second opera was science fiction.
Well, that's right, yeah, Under the Double Moon.
Yeah,
right?
so because I was worried that it would be a trap. Because you know, I mean, in a way, the same thing of, someone asked us, you know, are you going to do Martin Luther King next? You know? And this is my brother. They asked my brother, and my brother said, no, well, this is part of a religious trilogy. We're doing Brigham Young. my brother's sense of humor. So, so the person who asked the question was kind of saying or aghast, you know, what? Brigham Young? Okay. So
you did. But you did, of course, then, after Under the Double Moon, you did go back to historical.
Because doing a science fiction is hard. That is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, doing an original story is the hardest thing to do in opera, because other than comedy. Comedy is really hard too. Because what it is when the exposition, you have to create that, you know, there's nothing assumed. I mean, one of the reasons history is so popular in opera, it's not just recent. I mean, it's Don Carlo. It's very.
We studied, actually, we did a unit in my class a couple of weeks ago, my opera dramaturgy class, where everybody was assigned an opera about a historical figure, and we looked at how the story of that person was told, how faithful it was, and if not, why not, and so on. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at Handel or whatever, you know. I mean, but I think that, but what it is that you realize that everything you do is fiction. You know, so even when you're doing history, it's you're deciding what events are important. You're deciding what the narrative is. You're deciding what the story is. So you're interpreting history. You're reinterpreting it. You're reinventing it for the audience. So it's a story you want to tell within the story.
Yeah, there's an old film by John Sayles, a great American film director, called Liana. Did you ever see that?
Yes, sure.
The very first scene of that one of the main characters is a film professor, and he's teaching a class where he talks about what a documentary is. And, you know, everybody kind of thinks as, you know, documentary is, you know, all the news that's fit to print, you know, straight up reporting. But of course, there's no such thing. I mean, even you pick up the newspaper, you know, if you pick up 5 different newspapers talking about the same headline story, they're going to give you a slightly different slant, emphasize different characters, different, you know, aspects of it. And of course, it's the same with a work of art that's based on fact.
Definitely, I mean, and I think that, you know, with Amistad, I even took more liberties with the story because I wanted to disrupt the master narrative. Yeah, because I think you want to disturb what is the master trope. You know, like I didn't want to do a story about a few good white men. You know, I mean, the Schindler's List for black people. That's not.
Right. Yeah, you were saying in the session yesterday, we had the great good fortune to spend. Anthony gave a full day's, you know, sort of exegesis, if you will, of Amistad, this wonderful opera about the ship Amistad, the actual true story, and you did say something like that. But what is then? You know, if you said that you wanted to sort of subvert the narrative, because you said coincidentally, at the same time you were doing this is when Spielberg was making the film.
Well, not so coincidentally, actually.
Oh, really?
No.
Well, that
no.
Sounds like an interesting story. Tell us.
Oh, it's too, no. I remember when this was in 1987. I went to Thanksgiving dinner at Henry Louis Gates' house in Durham. He was teaching at Duke. And so Skip actually asked me, well, what's your next project? This was after X, and I wanted to say, and Talia and I had already proposed to Beverly to do Amistad. What's the next project we want to do? So I said, oh, I want to do the opera Amistad. He said, great. So it turns out there was a guy there, Cinque Henderson, who was from DreamWorks.
Oh, God.
And he was sitting there at dinner, and he said, oh, really? You're going to do an opera? And his name was Cinque, actually.
Right.
So he said, really? You're going to do an opera? And I said, yeah. He said, wow, what a great idea.
Ooh.
So I said, so he took it to Spielberg.
Oh my God! Like, I guess you've edited your dinner conversations ever since.
Yeah, well, you know, I probably haven't, but you know, I mean, I'm used to it. I mean, I did X, and then Spike Lee did X, and I did Amistad. It's that. And it's really fun. The funniest part is that now I heard Spielberg was considering doing a movie about Standing Bear. He was looking into it.
Oh my God!
It was really weird.
It's really
I said, what's going on here?
Great minds think alike.
Yeah.
So you said, to go back to an interesting statement that you made a couple of minutes ago about the idea, do you go into every historical topic with the idea of sort of subverting the traditional narrative?
Well, yeah, yes, I think you go into it because, first of all, doing an opera isn't an intervention in itself, because you're having people sing, they're expressing their inner feelings about what's happening. You're creating this whole other dimension. I mean, the opera is not a realistic medium, so it's something where you're actually always going to be drawing on, expanding on reality. It's not the genre where you want to do, you know, realpolitik or politik or whatever. So naturally, you think about, and then in looking at the structure of the opera, the form of it also dictates, you know, gives you different ideas of how to interpret it. For X, for example, when I was working with my bright brother and Talani on it, we realized that you would have a 3-act structure, and each act was a name change. So it's an opera about the transformation. It's not that different from Siegfried. You know, in the sense of like the first act is the transformation of Malcolm Little to become Malcolm X. He becomes Malcolm X in the first act. And the second act, and actually becomes Detroit Red at the end of the first act, kind of a street character. In the second act, he becomes Malcolm X. Third act, he becomes El Hajj Malik al-Shabazz. He makes his pilgrimage to Mecca. So each chain, each act is actually signified literally by the name change. So that gave us a overall form and structure for it. Then with Amistad, we had the intervention of using Year of the Deities in the opera.
Right.
So the subtext, the Amistad opera, was the coming to America of the trickster, Aishu, how Aishu came to America. And a lot of that came out of conversations I had with George Wolfe and Talani in our initial discussions about the opera. We talked about the fact that the minstrel show in America began about the same time as the Amistad Rebellion, which was about 1839, is when Thomas Rice and the Christie Minstrels started. And the first minstrel shows, and the minstrel show became very popular in America. One of the reasons for the it was one of the most popular forms of entertainment, not just in the South, but all over the country. And what was interesting about it is that there was an anxiety in the country about slave rebellions. Anxiety about, of course, about slavery, about and the potential of slave rebellions. So it was trying the minstrel show's function was really to say, okay, there's the happy slave. There's Sambo and Tambo. There are people who are happy in slavery. And so this myth of the happy slave was, in a way, this kind of antiseptic, this antidote to the anxiety about potential rebellion. You already had Nat Turner, you had Denmark Vesey, and then, of course, you had the Amistad. Right. And the Amistad was a sensationalized event, because Talani did a lot of research on the news accounts.
Talani gave us the librettist of Malcolm X and
and she's amazing.
Who's your cousin, and just one of the great poets, fiction writers, and opera librettists around.
And she's an incredible investigative reporter too, in terms of how she investigates a subject. So she looked into, all the really hysterical articles that were covering the Amistad Rebellion, and it was interesting because when we did the opera, it was between 1995 and 97, so it's the time of the O.J. trial and O.J. Simpson, and it really resonated with that.
Oh boy, yeah.
Because this idea of when Time magazine, they had a picture of O.J., they made him darker in the cover of the magazine because he didn't look menacing enough when he was the way he looked. Right. There was this whole thing about race and this thing about the racial fear, and then also this thing about the media frenzy. So that's why we had reporters, Amistad are facing. It's one of the controversial elements of it. I mean, I think a lot of people were uncomfortable, made people uncomfortable because in the opera we did a lot of stuff that was almost like a Spike Lee moment. It was every racial invective from the 1840s was used. And actually, Talani, the report, they start talking about the word put in quotations, nigger, okay, but what Talani did was genius and brilliant. It was really what the reporters were talking about was the etymology of the word. Where does the word come from? It comes from part of cotton, and people don't read it from the nigger. So this whole thing is about the derivation of the word, which is brilliant. It's just like a genius thing. But I think people didn't really notice. They didn't really listen to it. They just thought, well, it's about a lot of racial invective, etc. But there was a lot of deep things behind it.
And you were saying yesterday too that part of your model for those characters, the reporters in Amistad, was the Jews in Salome by Strauss. That sort of
actually wasn't.
hectoring.
Yeah, that's what Dennis Russell Davies thought.
Dennis Russell Davies.
He thought it was like
okay.
the Jews in Salome. Yeah.
But it wasn't sort of just.
Yeah, well, it was because they're always making these comments, and also they also set up the characters. They introduce you to the characters in the court. They do this, and Talani was a reporter, so she always was fascinated with what they talked about after the event. How they discussed it.
Right.
They all get together and they have these arguments and they talk about different points of view, and so that's what that is. And some of them are really intensely racist. Some of them are try to be liberal and not completely liberal. They say, well, and it was also dealing with things like affirmative action. I mean, so that's in it too. I mean, it reflects on today. For example, there's this guy who said, well, whites need equal justice. When the reporter says that was in the context of the Michigan decision, that's in the context of the other things that were going on now.
Now, I would love for you to also articulate what you said yesterday about the idea of telling the story of Amistad, besides the recounting of the historical story, was for you the idea of African Americans coming to America.
Well, the creation of the African American. Right. Really. I mean, that's what kind of Baraka did that a little bit in Blues People. But we talked in this, the idea of the Aishu coming to America is how we became African. how we became this who we are culturally, this mixture of the African and the European. Mm-hmm. And that's profoundly about, what our culture is, in a deep sense, from our, not just popular culture, but it seeps into everything. And so, so that was fascinating. That was fascinating to me. So the Aishu's coming to America, this idea of also in how what Henry Louis Gates talked about in The Signifying Monkey, how the monkey speaks to power, how he deals with the lion. He deals with his wit and guile with language. Mm-hmm. So in this way, so our art and our language and our music was the way was the way to survive. Yeah. Was the way to survive, and out of slavery was born our culture, and that's always the profound irony of American culture, because it's born out of that.
Totally, yeah, all of American culture, not just African American culture. One of your historical operas is not race-centered, and that's Tanya, right? Yeah. So, tell us about the impetus for that.
Well, it was interesting because actually, what it came, a lot of my thing comes out of image. I went to when I was at Opera Theater St. Louis, when I was doing Under the Double Moon, I went to a production of Abduction in Soraya, and it was Graham Vick's production. It was kind of done like Laugh-In. Like we had Laugh-In thing, but the Pasha was this. But the one interesting part, it deals with race. The Pasha was this really elegant, erudite, unbelievably articulate person, and all the white people, Bianca and everyone else, Constanza, they were the crude Europeans,
Right.
And so it kind of
does. The Pasha ends up being the merciful.
Yeah, exactly. But he has this long table with this elegant dinner, and so I was fascinated. I said, well, how would Peter Sellers do this? And I was wondering how Peter Sellers would do Abduction. I said, well, he'd do it as Patty Hearst, I mean, the Patty Hearst story would kind of work as abduction stuff, right? So, but I was talking about all the ways it wouldn't work. I said, well, it wouldn't work because of this.
Right.
This is what I'm doing while I watch it. So they said, well, why don't you do Patty Hearst? So that's how it got. And then I had this vision of a diva holding an M16, the gun, and the thing. That was it. Yeah. I said, I could do that. And it was iron, but I wanted to do it. So I was looking for librettists to do the opera, and it was very funny. I interviewed a number of people, and a lot of them came with very earnest treatments in the story, like the made-for-TV version, like the poor, rich heiress who gets kidnapped, and she's brainwashed, and then it was so sad. And so I said, no, I think it's funny. I think there's a black dark humor thing that's going on, because this idea. Whereas X was a transformation story of as I said, going through the name changes, etc. Patty was a transformation story too. She was Patty, then she becomes Tanya, the revolutionary, and she becomes Patty again. Because it's cyclical, there's something comic about it. So then I met Michael John Cusa, and he came to me and he said, well, he was obsessed with Patty Hearst when he was a kid. He used to pretend he was Patty Hearst. and he said that he had a cardboard box, and he used to have his friends. This is on Buffalo. His friends, he would get in the box, and he would pretend he was Patty Hearst in the box. So I said, Michael, you're perfect. So then when we started working on it, he gave me a libretto, I think, in 2 weeks or something. He wrote the whole thing, and it was great. And what was interesting about it, we decided that would be 2 parts of the opera. The stage would be divided between the closet and the bedroom. Basically, everything takes place in the closet and the bedroom, and it's sort of Patty Hearst today in Connecticut. Yeah. Who's an aspiring actress, all this stuff. Who appeared in John Waters movies and all that. Right. And then the SLA is hiding in her closet. So it's like this complete postmodern reversal. So when she goes to her closet, she feels like the closet door is warm. So she goes to the closet door, she opens the door, and the SLA kidnaps her through the door. So progressively in the staging of the opera, the closet gets bigger and bigger. And it takes over until it takes over the stage and becomes the closet world. Yes. And you can talk about being closeted and all that stuff too, but it was like but I was like excited about it because it was a very subversive way of dealing with story. But it does deal with race because Cinque, the leader of the SLA, was
Another
black.
Cinque.
Yeah, and actually, Mark Doss played both
Right.
Cinque in the opera and Cinque in Amistad. So he did both Cinques, and I intentionally wrote them in the same fa, so with the same voice. And so what's interesting about it, the only reason he was, this is what makes it really funny, one of the reasons it makes it funny, the only reason he was the leader of the SLA is because he was black, because the SLA felt they needed a black leader. So, and he was the only black person left. And so then I had this aria for Teiko, who's actually who was the what's his I forget what his real name. Oh, Bill Harris character, and Teiko always wanted to be black. So I wrote this article, If I Were a Black Man. No, at first I said, well, if I were a black man. Which is really like goofy. Yeah, that was a cheap laugh, but no, but I didn't do that. I did it as this weird kind of R&B song, you know, like, if I were a black man, yeah, everything would be so real. If I could be a black man, revolution's in my blood. I only got white blood in my blood, my blood. And the chorus of women doing this thing back and forth, just a little bit like Motown kind of thing. But it's sort of it's playful. This idea of like, and that's part of my music. That's part of what I do. Is like this playful quality of playing with history, playing with things, and then also musically, this kind of play, or how I deal with vernacular, for example, is that playing off the association in the music.
Exactly, and we just saw a demonstration of that in the piece that we just heard. That, you know, it completely, besides the fact that it's enjoyable, you know, it's sort of pop-like and all of that, but it immediately contextualizes it for us. It's like a contemporary costume or something.
You know what, you puts time in place.
Yeah, exactly.
And well, I was thinking,
she is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because there's a kind of transformation. I can't really do it just with piano, but what I thought of an aria, because I was thinking of, it's the late 50s, and a lot of Ellington and Strayhorn stuff in it, but then Benny Moré, you know, like the great Cuban singer. I listened a lot to Benny Moré's music. And so it actually transforms from it starts jazzy and it becomes a bolero out of it. So it's a more Cuban ballad form, and then as an instrumental, when it takes over, it becomes a rumba, becomes a whole rumba thing. So that, and I've always been fascinated how rhythm kind of tells stories.
Yeah.
Rhythm in itself, and a way, in my operas, rhythm functions the way in Wagner's operas leitmotifs and tonality functions.
Right, you were talking about in Amistad that you felt that the motifs were more rhythmic.
Yeah.
That would run throughout the opera and connect things.
Yeah, because the trickster has a certain kind of rhythmic character, and that's very different from John Quincy Adams' character. That's different from Cinque's character. You know, so this idea of this kind of having a rhythmic identity, how they, that deals with basic things of how they speak, how they sound, and also the intervallic, you know, how they use, how they conceive melody in terms of their playing rhythm.
Now, that's one of the things I love about your work most is that, you know, there's so much, the way that you build characters is really wonderful and extraordinary, and I think it's, to me, one of the things that's most lacking in contemporary American opera today, that there's, you know, a lot of good composers writing good music and good librettists writing good librettos, but then, you know, digging into the composers digging into the piece of libretto and really creating musical characterizations is something.
You know, that's interesting. I mean, and it's an interesting dilemma because, well, with some librettists have to realize that the characters have to sound different.
Right.
And so that works on every level in terms of how they have their language, and so, you know, one character can't use the same kind of metaphors and language as another character.
So it's an extreme example of that. If you know Rosenkavalier, it's like every single character in that opera is like of a different social class, a different neighborhood, a different country, and they all speak, both in the libretto and in the music, completely differently.
Yeah, well, and I think that, and they have different metaphoric resources, you know, like someone said, in Wakanda's Dream, that was an issue, I was working with Yusef Komunyakaa, is an incredible poet, fantastic poet, and, but when we initially worked on the libretto, it was his voice, it was so preeminent in it, because it was his poetic voice, and every character had the most profound, perceptive outlook on everything. I mean, they spoke in metaphors.
Right.
And so, so in a way, what we had to do working together is to strip down the metaphoric language so that the characters could have a different, every character
Different
could be
texture.
different. Whereas one of the, you know, like Dolores, the mother, she was fascinated with the past, and she spoke, you know, that was natural for that.
Right.
And the son who sees Standing Bear, of course, he would use that. So
Right,
so,
and of course you want those passages to stand out, the really poetic passages.
yeah. So but it's interesting. I think that's something that composers have to do together. You have and defining and they have to be willing to really collaborate. I mean, I think too often there's not really a collaboration that composers take a libretto and they just do it. And I think you can't do that.
Well, tell us then a little bit more about what you find to be the ideal process.
Well, I think that you have to work with the concept of the piece first with the librettist, and ideally with a director or a third party, and then work through what kind of the structure, what you want, what do you really want to say with the piece. Then as you work, then as you write the draft of the first few scenes, you get the sense of how it's coming together. And then, maybe write a little bit together, and then try to figure out what the whole libretto is, what the shape of it is, and then to, really begin to work on it. Then realize that as you work on the music, things will come up, because setting words to music is a reinterpretation of the words. You're putting a different emphasis. You're saying what's important. And you're directing how the words are perceived. So it's not like, and so I think there has to be give and take with that.
It's like a lot of especially librettists that come from the playwriting world. We're talking about this. That in playwriting you talk about the beats of the character, which it's left up to the actors to sort of supply that.
So
but
I'm giving the beats.
The composer, you're doing it.
That's why comedy's so hard. I mean, I've done comic things in it, but the thing is, because then it's all about the rhythm. It's all about the beat has to be right. The space between utterances, how you work. I mean, that's why Mozart's probably the only one who's good at it.
One of the few.
I mean, there are only few of them. I mean, and I think that I like to try to do more of that, because I think the humor. I mean, like also reflecting what contemporary theater is doing too. Because I think opera's disconnected sometimes. We're dealing with
That's what we're trying to do here.
Kind of 19th century notions of how language works and everything. And I like to see, a different, more of how you can use the everyday language in an elevated way.
Now that brings me to the question, since you've done both, how was it different for you writing operas about relatively recent history like Tanya and Malcolm X, and then Amistad, which is 1839, more distant history? Is it a real difference for you?
There's some differences. I mean, I think one of the issues, of course, is you did with the rights issues, because you could get sued by a living person. Because they say, well, I didn't say that, and so I had to deal with that one. I remember when Betty Shabazz came into City Opera and was upset with a couple of words that were said in her aria. So at the time I had to change it. Now I can change it back, but I think that that's out of respect to the people who are here, and I think in a way you have more freedom with the past,
Yeah.
Like with Amistad, I pretty much had free reign. But I think what the more contemporary story it has a different kind of, because it's part of our cultural memory, our recent memory. People read about it, know about it, so they come in with they come in with something that you can bounce off. So you bounce off their assumptions and sort of.
Right. However, you're still dealing with, you know, presumably people who spoke differently.
Yeah.
You know, who had a different cultural frame of reference. Those are your characters. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think in Tanya, Michael John developed this. I think this. I call it elevated vulgarity. I mean, it's like so vulgar. It's like extreme.
Now, do you think that's? You know, I've always wondered why Tanya hasn't quite made the rounds as much as some of your other pieces. Do you think that's the reason?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he wrote this thing for the. He has this wonderful thing where she meets. Everything in Tanya, it's very Brechtian too, because like everything's about, like, she's obsessed with being, what she weighs and eating, consumption.
Yeah.
It's like Brecht and Bob, they always talk about that, monogamy or something.
Right.
So said, so that she's meeting her friend for lunch, for tea or something. You sure like to eat. Oh, I'm a and then out of it, you realize that the woman is one of the members of the S-Lay. She says, "You're a fucking piece of dog shit. You're a fucking fast piece of dog shit. There's a poodle shit you out its fucking asshole." What? The poodle shit you out its fucking asshole?
Yeah, right.
I mean, but that's profound though. The image of the poodle, the ribs, the thing. But it's like, it's so vulgar and it's so out. But it's out.
Well, I guess they're not going to do that one in Provo, Utah.
No. But actually, it was done in Vienna.
Well, please, they have no problem.
They loved it.
Loving that.
Yeah, right.
The more scatology, the better.
It was fun for me, but also how I said it, I did it like almost like it was Gilbert and Sullivan, because because it was like it was sort of play. It's this play, like and everything about they had so much of it was. That kind of language, and he wrote this one aria that was so funny. It was about Cinque's aria about, and it was after 9/11. It was weird because it's actually written. The opera was written in 1992. So, but the CD came out in 2001. But they had "I'm the smoke of your jumbo jet. I'm the bomb at your Super Bowl. I'm the outlaw. I'm the other outlaw. I'm the it's like, what?
Yeah.
But that was kind of prescient.
Yeah, afraid so.
Yeah, but that gets to be. But I think it's quite interesting because it gets to be. But it's more of a postmodern take on it. Yeah. Larry.
He's giving it. All right. Well,
trying to be subtle.
I wanted to go back also and ask more about the issue of dealing with. Characters in your operas who may still be among us, when you were talking about Betty Shabazz or did you get any input from Patty Hearst or her people? No?
No.
Really?
They came. I know they came. Someone came, but it was interesting because it was very funny because initially when I did it, like, I remember people were worried. I had to take responsibility for in case they got sued. We got sued because that no one was going to do it if they were worried about the potential lawsuits and stuff. So I thought, who cares? I mean, okay. I mean, it's only money, right?
So you took, you legally
I had to legally take on.
Wow.
It was
That's
very strange.
Brave. That really
Well, no, I figured, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think, that was the danger of it. I mean, I was prepared to call her Rosebud.
Right.
It comes from Citizen Kane, so Rosebud. I was going to call her Rosebud or something like that. I was going to be my little joke, Oh no, she's not Patty Hearst, she's Rosebud.
Sure. Just like Verdi said, oh, that's not the king of France,
right.
King of Sweden. That's Ricardo, the governor of Boston.
Yeah. Right. You have to in that case you would go into that because But I thought that would be funny because also the City of Kane is about her, you know, her grandfather. So.
Right. Yes, I know. It's very. In our last couple of minutes, does anybody have any questions for Anthony?
Yeah,
Miriam,
yeah.
of course you.
One of the things that I hear a lot is use of very everyday language in contemporary pieces, and I find sometimes when it's set syllabically, we just kind of I get this kind of feeling of constant recitative, and I'm wondering that thing you said about using everyday language in an elevated way. How is it the rhythmic aspect, or is it the melisma, the melismatic settings, or is it repetition of the text? What is it that
all of the above?
All of the above.
Yeah, no. Sometimes it's about that, and also it's. I mean, the everyday word can be poetry too. I mean, I mean that there's a poetry to. I mean, like Mac Wellman's writing or something like that. You know, I mean, I think, you know, I've worked with people. It's interesting because what it does is that. And then it's sometimes using song.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm not averse to admit. I think it's important to have song.
Mm-hmm.
So I embed songs, and I find ways of expanding song forms so they seamlessly move in and out of songs. So it's not like so there's not a division, and then also the fact that the song forms themselves can be expandable. So that for example, a song doesn't return to where it started.
Mm-hmm.
The song takes you from A to B, from one point to another. And even tonally, you can end up in another place at the end of it. And I think that's interesting to me. So, but I like the idea of sometimes using this contained form. Like now, I've been working a lot with a playwright, Alan Havis. We worked together on the last 2 operas I've done, and I've been doing a lot more writing words, working with him, because as a playwright, he doesn't really write songs per se, and I make him into songs. So when I want to have that, I can do it. And I think I find that's helpful, because I think that in a way songs are elevated speech.
Yes.
And songs are a different kind of elevated speech, and also the use of repetition, the use of the refrain, the use of other things, I think is really important. And also, then it bounces off what the song means. You know, like sometimes if there's a vernacular context for the song. For example, in Lilith, I use the blues a lot. And because when they read from the archives, which is mostly like the Bible or the archives, the archives of the blues. The archives. Let me read from the archives. And then da 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 da. You know, so you're into the blues, because that's to me the archives of human history and the relationship of man and woman, particularly. It's all you know, told through the blues in a way. So that's a conceit I use that's very useful. Makes the piece live in a different way. And then sometimes I even use hip hop, you know, stuff, you know. So you find it. I mean, it's really funny for an opera singer to do hip hop. It's really kind of hilarious.
And then you have the repetitive rhyme scheme too, which helps.
And I usually write the lyrics when they do that, when we do that, because in Wakana's Dream I wrote a hip hop thing, and in this I wrote a hip hop. You know, so I like to delve in that in a way, because and I think that it makes a different kind of contemporaneity about the telling of the story. It brings it into a different context, and also.